Cool. So I thank you guys for joining us this afternoon or today. I just wanted to start with a story from a few years back that kind of frames up today's episode of when a US colleague of mine, a female colleague of mine from the US but working at school with me in Myanmar, came to talk to me about a trend she'd seen coming up with some of the boys in the class especially. And she referenced this name, Andrew Tate. And I did not know who that was. I did not know what it was about. So I had to go and do some work. And this was during COVID, so we had our teenagers all online for asynchronous or independent study and really kind of unsupervised access to the internet at all times of day. And what my colleague was reporting was that some of the attitudes and words that she was associating with Andrew Tate was being reflected in some of the 12, 13, 14-year-old boys when they were transitioning back into class. And there was one conversation I remember with one of the boys that really kind of jumped out to me, where he was 13 years old and he saw menstruation as a manipulation to control men. He didn't see it as an actual biological process. And it was really shocking to hear that from a 13-year-old boy. There was no confusion over what it was. There was no biology or curiosity. He had these well-formed opinions that were just completely inappropriate for his age. And I started looking into where that could have come from and why it would have been there. And research out of Oxford talks about the algorithmic penetration or the algorithmic reach and the way curiosity online can lead to some very dangerous paths because the more explicit or the more controversial content gets more engagement. So what starts as a simple click can lead down the rabbit hole. And there was a moment to me where I went, wow, who actually has been fathering these boys? Who has been influencing the opinions that young men in our world and society currently have? I'm realizing it's not necessarily us anymore. And maybe that was something that I wanted to talk about and sort of share. And I'm glad to have you both here and agree to being on the show with us. I'm wondering, the premise of fathering it out and talking about the role of men in society to be positive role models and to offer a counter narrative, when that became something that you also felt was important to you. Jez, do you want to open
Yeah,
that?
no, I mean, I'm just picking up on what you were saying. You were talking about this concept of things coming out during COVID. And I think we all, as parents and fathers, came up against a lot during COVID. I have 3 daughters, and when they were at home during COVID, although one hadn't quite arrived, they arrived during COVID, we were in a situation where our children were on devices a lot. And I know we're not here today to talk about devices, but I think it was really important to note that they were picking up things when we weren't maybe supervising them. And as a father or as parents, how do we not control that, but how do we moderate it? And I think what you were talking about in your story is this concept that there's so much unprotected, unguided time where young people are exposed to certain things and that becomes their figure, their role model, or their father perhaps in this situation. So I'm not sure if I really answered what you were saying, but I just wanted to give a kind of perspective based on what you were saying and what I experienced. So yeah.
Well, if I can ask, sort of, were there any of those issues that you went, oh, that's something that I want to address, or we should be more aware of? Because the word supervision, I always break it down to what's super about my vision. Yeah. There actually isn't much super about my vision, but I'm expected by society to supervise the kids.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredibly interesting and difficult to think through. I think we all developed a cloudy moment in our brain during COVID. But I would say I noticed a palpable shift in the students that I worked with before and after COVID.
Right.
And whether I am making those connections because we were all affected by COVID and we're all looking for answers and we're trying to work out how kids, young people, humans are behaving differently based on what they experienced. In terms of supervisor role, there was not much vision in the supervision because I was teaching, my wife was full-time, I'm full-time, and we had 2 children in the house. And how can we possibly parent effectively in that situation? So, yeah, in terms of answering your question about supervision, I think a lot of young people experienced a lack of vision in the supervising.
And that vision word kind of has an intention behind it. Something's intentional because you know where you're going. And we didn't know where it was going. How about you, Nof? Join us as a father and school counselor. Is there been a moment where you've gone, I should talk about this?
Yeah, I think for me, kind of the start of it, I guess, would be in 2016 during the Trump election and the Access Hollywood.
We just got cancelled. You mentioned Trump.
Sorry. I mean, that's where I start to see things that have to do with this like really toxicity in our young people, and seeing that translate into being online, and seeing students that are in classes with their videos on, some of them, and with some statements behind them, flags, things like that our teachers are seeing. One student with a rainbow flag, another student with a Trump flag, or something that shows kind of, I guess, some
allegiance to more extremist views.
Yeah, more extremist views. That's a good way to put it. And our teachers are in those classrooms figuring out how to have classes with these different representations on their screen, and that the students can see each other's screens at the same time. And in that circumstances, it was acceptable for those students to express their views in that way from their homes, from their bedrooms, right? That I wouldn't see in the same way in the classroom. And that acceptability, I think, of those more extremist views and expressions has continued to some degree outside of the screen classroom too, and into the classrooms.
It's interesting because what you've touched on as well is it's not just the toxic masculinity. There's also, it comes back to that the algorithm is feeding extreme content for the engagement. So it's leading to toxic masculinity or very extremist religious views or political views. And it's just reaching into our younger generations without us having the oversight or the vision of what do we want them seeing.
Yeah, and without the interpersonal relationships, I think it's easier to find those pathways into the more extreme if you're not having person-to-person, face-to-face relationships with people, because your blinders are on.
Yeah. I think that leads into kind of maybe the next topic of why is this working? And when I started looking at why does it work, work by Brothenbrenner on systems of society and how we learn, that traditionally human societies and learning has been, I look to the people immediately around me, those human connections, and I see my family and I see my friends, and I look a little bit further and I see the community a little bit further out. I see the culture, and it goes from the micro to the macro and the external kind of pressures. But that system or that theory also posits that when there's a weakness in the middle, there's a lack of oversight, it gets filled from the outside in. And the algorithms got really good at picking up where maybe we've had to, for circumstance, take our eye off the ball a little bit. Here comes the algorithm to fill the gap. When you're wondering what political stance to take and you don't have someone to turn to, here comes the algorithm and it tells you what to take. And I kind of wondering why it works and how does this become the generation's narrative that they're referring to. Did you have any thoughts on?
Yeah, I do actually. Several things that you mentioned there. The other day, my daughter was doing a presentation on UN human rights, and she was talking about religion and children and how religion should be a child's choice. It's not necessarily, shouldn't be a parent's choice. And I think, I can't remember which of the UN human rights it is, but she spoke more eloquently than I am now, so well done to my daughter. But in that situation, she was talking about this concept of choice, concept of values, concept of what world we're brought into. And our values come from our parents. I know when I was brought up, my dad had very clear values. They weren't enforced. They were guided and they were offered, but they were often spoken about. And I think the place that we get our values from, I grew up in British culture. So I actually, although I'm not Christian, follow religion, I grew up with Christian values because British culture is very much about Christian values. So I have all these value systems that I draw upon. And I think what's happening now is that young people are finding their value systems from other places. And those algorithms that guide them down that path, maybe it takes 2 views of 2 different videos and suddenly the algorithms shift. And somebody is preying on those people and finding the right way for those algorithms to hit that spot so that they can get their information out, whatever it is. Okay, if we're relating to toxic masculinity, if we're talking about political views. But once they go down that rabbit hole, they then start to find their values in those places. So as a father, I think there are challenges. My daughters are probably too young at the moment to experience that, although there has been some instances, that they're finding their values from those places, and it's difficult to navigate that and compete with that. Because you can't swipe your father's face, and you can't go to the next thing, and you can't scroll through your dad's face or your parents' face. So, and that's where the endorphins are probably being released, and then the algorithm's there, and then suddenly, boom, there's the values. That's my opinion. It's my opinion.
You found something interesting there, that when you were growing up, it was your dad's values, and it was the culture values around you. And what you're kind of hitting on there is maybe an idea that has come back to me a few times, that previously, especially being someone living in a country that's not my own country and have done for years as an international teacher, I look around and sort of when I reflect back on the past, society used to parent children. If I was busy, I could trust that the neighbor would do something to help instill the values, or the culture would. And now if I'm not there, I don't actually know who is fathering my kid. So suddenly my son's looking up for father role models, dad's at work, who's filling that void? And someone will fill that void. And unfortunately at the moment, if it's not society, who is kind of the key question. With your stuff, North, have you seen a shift in role models and who people are looking up to over time?
Yeah, I mean, I guess where I was going a little bit off track of that question.
Go to your track then.
Yeah, because what I was thinking about is that with our screens in our rooms, I guess culturally our cultures have shifted to be very protective of our young people. And that protection has led them to being inside a lot of the time and having access to the screens a lot of the time. And so that's where they don't get that opportunity to be parented by the neighbor or the person down the street, or to go out and have an adventure and have a misadventure and get hurt potentially or figure things out on their own. And so I wonder if that protection that we're having for our children so much of the time in so many different ways is keeping them inside and not allowing them to engage with each other, engage with the culture, engage with the environment that they're in, that risk-taking that happens so much or can happen so much in childhood. And I wonder, too, if that's where some of the toxic masculinity really finds its foothold, because that does play into the risk-taking or the kind of machismo attitude and towards the world. And I think that risk-taking is really, really good, and it's really important for growth. And
that
boys and girls
risk-taking builds a sense of competency in yourself and confidence, and it kind of links to kind of self-determination theory with Ryan and Decky's work of all human beings for psychological safety or well-being need a sense of belonging, a sense of agency or autonomy, and a sense of competence.
And if we shelter that all in a bubble,
then
you're going to look for it somewhere else, and you're going to try to find it, and it's not necessarily successful, but you're looking for it.
I think you kind of hit a nail on the head for me when you said toxic masculinity does kind of tick some of those boxes, because that message is, brother, you belong here.
Yep.
We're one of you. You're one of us. So come with us. It says, you follow my steps and you can be successful. So you've got your competency built on. And it also says, if you're not succeeding, it's not your fault. It's this person's fault or this group of people's fault. And for a 11-year-old, 12-year-old boy, that's a villain to pitch off against when you're not finding success elsewhere. That can become quite intoxicating. I can see how it would fit those molds.
Yeah.
So would you say that like risk-taking would almost be, or some of those risky behaviors offline are protective kind of mechanisms against
Absolutely, yes.
some?
Yes. I mean, that's a weird way or a strange way to put it, I guess. But yes, I think that the risk-taking in childhood is so important to that development. And I want my kids to be safe. I don't want them to get hurt. And I need them to take risks so that they can grow up and be self-sufficient and have confidence in themselves.
And it's really interesting as a parent. I mean, I'm thinking about when I grew up, we'd get home from school and my parents would be like, right, out you go.
Yeah.
Go.
Welcome home, goodbye,
Off you
come
go.
back at dinner.
Build a treehouse, build a rope swing that snaps so you fall down a hill and almost break your neck, which did happen. True story to my brother, actually. But you were given that freedom. Now, as a parent now, I am like the dad in Paddington Bear. You know, where he's all like risk-taking and he's the dad, you know, before children, he's the husband, and then he goes to the hospital and they have the baby. He takes them on a motorbike, so his wife gives birth, and then he comes back a day later in a Volvo, which I had last year in Germany. He comes in a Volvo and he's like, everybody be careful, please, don't take risk. And I really try to model my parents in that sense, that I want my daughters to have risks. Yet there is a thing in the brain that stops you from doing this. And you kind of go, oh, could you just, would you, please don't, if you're on the sofa, just be careful, please. And it happens. And I don't know, I have so much respect for my parents because they allowed that to happen. And we didn't get hurt, we got grazed, we got scratched, we got bumped. But we learned how to work with, not work, but how to communicate effectively. We worked how to play, take risks.
Yeah, it's interesting because I recognize the same in myself. My son constantly, I in my role at work, I do a lot of risk assessments for outdoor excursions with students and with trips going out into the field to learn from the world. And I carry that work home so often that my son says, like, mum's the fun one because mum lets him take those risks to go a little bit higher on the swing, and he'll show me videos of what he did when he was with his mum. Be like, "Are you scared of that, Papa?" I'm like, "Yes, absolutely. Like, I can fix the glass that you break, but I can't fix an outfit. My son, I need. That's the one son I've got. I can't replace that." So then, I want to cocoon at the same time, looking back and going, "But that's not what's best for him to develop." And that's probably a struggle that we're all still fathering out.
For sure. Yeah. For sure. Then you mentioned this idea that, I mean, maybe it's just an assumption, or is it a reality, that young people are not playing outside as much. It could just be an age, it could be a perspective thing, it could be what we feel. I know it's true for my sister and her family, that she talked about that a lot when the kids were a lot younger. Is it true for our family? We live in a very sort of safe place, it's okay for them to play outside. But if they're not doing that, what are they doing? Now, when I was a kid, okay, we didn't have like online devices. We'd play Mega Drive or something like that, and we would sit there and we'd play for hours on games, but we'd balance that out with going outside. The issue now, I think, is that those conversations that happen online are so readily available, right? And whatever those algorithms are one thing, but then the conversations that continue without supervision. I want to go back to that concept of like supervision. There's so many conversations happening online in text messages that are not supervised.
Or they're being supervised by an algorithm that does not have the same intention and vision and values that we would want to see coming through.
My parents weren't supervising me when I was outside playing in the street or playing on the field and rolling around and having rough and tumble and like probably using bad language and probably saying silly things. But there was somebody else in the community walking by, and then there was somebody else that could witness it. There was somebody else that could casually supervise you as they see it. But now I think I'm concerned about parenting later. When my daughters have access to that sort of stuff, how do we supervise?
And I think, and I'll come to you in a moment, North, in response to a story I'll share of coming sort of linking the 2 points, that society or your parents would trust that somebody else there would hold you accountable or pick you up and brush you off if you fell down or whatever else. And a few years back, I was in the UK during a summer break from school, took my son to a playground. You know, he's swinging, he's climbing, he's doing the monkey bars, whatever. And playgrounds are a much safer place than they were before, for better or worse. But he was having a time of his life. And coming from predominantly living in Asian context where culture and society does tend to step in a little bit more, and there's a bit more of a family value still in place, I didn't think about it. A kid was coming down the monkey bars just in front of my kid and struggling, looking really scared. And I said, do you want a hand? And I held my hands up. Instantly, mum has jumped off the park bench where they were sat scrolling on their phone. What are you doing, like, trying to touch my kid? Well, I'm you weren't doing it, and your kid's terrified, screaming at the top of the monkey bars. I was trying to help your kid. That's my kid right behind who's waiting for his turn, and I'm trying to facilitate this. And then I reflect back and go, well, now I'm more anxious to send my kid out on those risky behaviors because do adults still have the confidence to step in?
Yeah.
Because now even if they want to, is society going to hold them in a negative vision for it? And I think, how do we balance that? We want the risky play, but we need society in place before we can facilitate that risky play. Is there a balance there? I don't know if you raised the kind of risky play, so I'm going to throw this one at you.
That's a tough question. I guess I haven't run across that instance before. Although I guess I haven't run across somebody telling me not to help their kid, but I have offered that before to help a kid that seems like they need that help. I guess I don't know where that balance is. I guess I innately am optimistic and trust in others' best intentions, and so I guess I'm not. I would feel like my kid playing out in the neighborhood, if people see him and he's hurt, they're going to help out.
You've still got that trust in
humanity.
Yes,
I still have that trust. Maybe I'm naive, but I think that helps me live more fully, I guess.
Yeah.
Or it helps me live a happier life.
You need to tell us how you do it. Because
slightly less anxious, slightly less nervous.
I'm listening going, yes, tell me more, tell me more.
What is the secret?
Yeah, because...
I'm sending my kid to your house.
Yeah. Well, I have 3 girls, you have 2 boys. I mean, maybe there's a difference there. I don't know. It's... just share the secret, please.
No secret.
But I think all 3 of us at some point in the last 5-10 minutes have referenced our own childhoods and growing up. And when I look at that, who's fathering our kids now if it's not society? Oh, that's not who I want fathering my kid. I don't want the algorithm fathering my child. I want society doing it. And I look back over my childhood and some of those people who were not necessarily my father, not my dad, but showed me what it meant to be a good man or a good human being. And there was 2 stories that kind of kept coming into my mind when we was looking at this episode. One of them, I must have been about 6 or 7. And I grew up in East London on a council estate, very diverse, multicultural environment. And I was out playing football with, 14, 15 kids from the council estate, several of them from, different fathers but the same mother, from 5 different ethnic backgrounds, older, younger, whatever. And then on the way home, I'd fallen over and just grazed my knee and taken a good sizable chunk off. And an older gentleman came out with a hanky, brushed me down and went, "You'll be all right, son. Off you go." And he probably never thought of it again. But that story and that kind of memory has stuck with me for a long time from the age of 6 of, that was a good human being. That was a good man. Someone that, I would want to be to somebody else's kid, or I want my kid to be to somebody else. And then I had a similar kind of event a few years later. I was about 15, 16. I used to go and watch the ice hockey regularly on my own. And, there was a girl from school who I quite liked. And, it was a shared interest. And her grandparents would turn up to take her to the games. And I would go on my own. And then there was an away match where I couldn't go unsupervised. And they said, well, you can come with us. You can come with this your classmate, and we'll supervise you on the trip. And while we're on the trip, we watch the ice hockey game finishes, and then everyone can go on and play, just ice skate. I had very limited money, so I had chosen and prioritized having lunch rather than saving enough money to go ice skating afterwards. So I'm sat on the sides. And the grandfather came over, sat down with someone. He was like, "Why aren't you skating? Are you worried about skating? Like, I can come on the ice with you and help you." I was like, "No, I don't want. I'm kind of feeling quite shamed." And he went, "Okay, no problem. Enjoy watching." Came back 5 minutes later. He was like, "Hey, I found this on the floor near you." It was a £10 note, which was enough for my skate hire to go out skating. So he had known he could see that I wanted to be out there and something was stopping me, and did what he could to facilitate me taking those risks maybe, or connecting with human beings, and did it in such a way that I didn't feel like I was being questioned on my competency or my sense of belonging. And I wonder if you have memories maybe from your childhoods of someone that wasn't necessarily family that did show you when you was out and about, a memory or a moment where you go, that person was fathering and they wasn't my father.
Yeah. It's really interesting, isn't it? Because there's so many different aspects of life, and sometimes a father figure is actually not a male figure. Yep. And so, because I have my parents, and I went to a local theatre school, and I would go to this theatre school, and I really enjoyed it. And the leader of that theatre school, she was just incredible at constantly guiding me, constantly being present, constantly giving me advice. I was not particularly good at theatre to start with, and so I had to build confidence. I thought I was very good, because I remember seeing her in a playground at school and saying, I'm going to join your theatre school, because I'm very good at theatre. And she went, oh, really?
We shall see.
But from that moment, her role was more about just giving me gentle confidence as I went through. When we did a production, I'd never had a big role. There was always this thing like, did you get a big role? No, I was the third soldier from the left. Or I was the, or the Irish...
The lobster in the nativity play.
Yeah, something like that. But she just kept encouraging me. And this constant, gentle encouragement of my confidence got me to a point where actually she gave me the foundations for my decision about what I wanted to do for a career, to be involved in the arts, to be involved in dance, to be involved in theatre. Now, was she a father? Was she a mother? Neither of those things, but she guided me in a way that was so positive and encouraging in a world where most boys are not encouraged to do, especially where I grew up. And I moved into dance as well, which is, again, not something that most boys do. And I found that out a lot at school. But she was a figure to guide me through that. So that's my experience of that. Yeah, that's my experience of being fathered. Yes, I guess. By a mother. I know it's kind of roundabout.
We can circle back round to that in a bit, because there's some interesting bits to pick out.
But I also, one thing I will say is that my dad himself had a very alternative way of bringing his kids up. He was quite a busy man. He worked a lot. He was an entrepreneur, but not the money-making type. But he created lots of businesses and did lots of things. He had a juggling factory. He had a kite-making factory. He had all these different things. But he would always come home and cook. So he'd come home and he would cook. And he wouldn't just cook alone. He'd say, right, you're going to come and help me, or you're going to observe, or you're going to watch, or you're going to chop the onions, or you're going to do this. And when I went home, it wasn't my mum was cooking, it was my dad, and he would always cook. And when my mum cooked, it was called TV dinner. So it was often like eggs and chips or what have you. Chips are fries, by the way, just so you know.
Right, I got it figured out.
Although sometimes it was chips. But my dad was always cook, but he always cooked a balanced meal, and he always talked about the importance of eating healthy and everything else. But other than that, my role models in my life, being into dance and being into theatre, were often women.
So it was more society parenting.
I was brought up in a more societal way with lots of women in my life, and it continues to be that way because I have a wife and 3 daughters. So, that was a roundabout way of.
How about yourself, Rolf?
I don't have any specific instances, but my dad also alternative. Like you, my parents separated when I was 2 years old, and so I lived in 2 different households my whole growing up. Basically, I would spend a week with my mom and a week with my dad. And so when I was at my dad's house, he was doing all of the household things that in a more traditional family mom might be doing. So I think that his role modeling in that area has really served me well in my relationship with my wife. Just being competent at cooking and cleaning and all these things that make a relationship balanced and healthy. So that, I think, was a big piece of what he has showed me. But I had 2 other fathers, I guess, that came into my life. My mom was with a man for about 7 years when I was growing up. And he was never my dad, never a stepdad. didn't ever see him that way, but had great influence over just kind of how I see myself. He was an ultra runner, and so he would do these really long runs, and I got to see him do that a couple times, these 100-mile races. So just witnessing that persistence and that dedication to something that he was passionate about, and he wasn't winning races, but he was really pushing himself, challenging himself.
Modeling positive values.
Modeling positive values and doing it with, he had a number of different men that he ran with, and I would connect with those fellows as well. And so that community that he had built around running, I think has been a good role model throughout my life. And that kind of grit and determination that he showed in those
It's interesting because it links to Bandura's social learning theory that you learn from what you see people doing and what you're exposed to and what's modeled rather than what people tell you to do.
Oh, yeah.
And I know they had a positive impact on you because we go running together. So it clearly lasted because you'd seen it and it had a positive influence.
Yeah. And then another fellow, my dad had a cabin on his property, and so we always had different people that were living with us that would live with us for a year or 2 years. And that was really wonderful for me just because I got to experience all these different adults that otherwise wouldn't have been in my life. And so there was one fellow, I think he moved in, probably I was 14 or 15 or something like that. And he lived with us for quite a while, same age as my parents. But he was into music and he was into rock climbing. And I spent a lot of time with him when I was 16, 17 years old, 18 years old, and actually after that as well, doing those things, playing music, rock climbing. When I graduated high school, I went on a 2-month rock climbing trip with just him and me, exploring the desert in the southwestern United States and rock climbing, and kind of an odd pairing of people to be out exploring the world with, but worked really well. And he's actually a therapist. He worked in schools as a school therapist. And when I got into my profession as a school counselor, kind of cognitively, it wasn't his influence, but obviously it's there.
Yeah.
Because he just finished his career 2 years ago, I think.
I think that's the influence of sort of the more knowledgeable person, that when we're looking to learn, when we're looking to see who we should be in society or how we should act in certain situations, you find yourself when you travel to a new place, you look at, well, what's everybody else doing? Mm-hmm. I will copy that because they're a little bit more knowledgeable, a little bit more comfortable in this area. And when our kids now are looking around and going, who's more knowledgeable than me? Who's the next person? And society, whether it's a female or a male role model, whether it's an athlete, it's my Instagram feed or it's my Twitter feed that's providing the next most knowledgeable person for me to look through. And for proximal development, that's saying to the kids, this is your next step. Mm-hmm. This is your next step. Because the values that maybe your parents are espousing are so high and lofty. Well, how do you get there? That's really hard. Why don't you take this little step with me down the garden path into the algorithm that can lead them quite horribly astray?
I think it's just thinking what you're saying there. There's this concept of, we live in a world at the moment which, what is truth? What's fact? What's fiction? What's been made up? What's AI? And we see it with young people all the time. I mean, I had a student just the other day come to me and say, "Oh, did you see this thing that happened?" It was an outpouring of emotion at a flag ceremony in a country. It was between two countries. I won't talk about which two countries it was, but it was two countries. And it was an outpouring of emotion. "Oh, did you see it?" And I was like, well, I read the news regularly. I haven't seen this. I'm scrolling through the news and I'm going, I literally can't find what you're talking about. He said, "It's true. Look, it's here." And they had their phone, which they probably shouldn't have had, but showed me the phone. And it was a video, surely, showing exactly what he was saying, an outpouring of emotion to a nation's flag. And it was controversial. And I looked at it and thought, is this true? Is this really happening? Yeah, it's here. And then he said, "Actually, this isn't the real one. There's another one." They scrolled again. And then he opened it and said, "This is the real one." I said, "But very similar to the last one that you just showed me. You said the last one wasn't real, but this one is real. So which is the real one?" "Oh, it's definitely this one. It's definitely this one." And the reason I say that is this fact versus fiction and this concept of, where's that new knowledge coming from that's informing who you are, how you live your life. Unfortunately, the things that they're seeing, to them, are fact, and we are not giving enough educational value to teaching young people or us as humans to decide what is true and what is not true. And I don't know if that is, I don't know how we overcome that challenge.
And I think it's interesting that you couldn't find that video or that news story on any of your searches. So how can we even guide them to fact check their materials when we're not seeing the same materials? You know, the echo chamber of their feeds and what they're being exposed to is very different to the echo chamber that we're seeing or being exposed to. So to even begin to have that supervision, like I can't see down your path. There's nothing there to guide. I can't guide you if I don't know what direction you're heading.
And when you look at the numbers and the figures, just the other day and a previous school that I was at, I did some feedback from the students. Like, how long are you on this social media platform for? Just have a look, just find out. And the average in one grade level, and this is a grade 10 grade level, was around about 4 hours. And out of those 4 hours, maybe 3 of it was social media. Now that's 3 hours. I'm going to go back to supervision because that is 3 hours where they are scrolling, which is purely invisible from educators and parents and everything else. So what goes in the algorithm, what they're seeing, we have zero control over.
Which comes back to our original idea. If we lose their control of that center circle, if we're not positive influences there, the algorithm will come in to do it for us. Children will always look for positive role models. They will always look for role models. They will always look for someone to parent them, someone to father them, someone to mother them. And if we're not doing it, the dangerous question is, who is? And if we don't even know who it is, we can't hold them accountable. We used to be able to say, North, my kid fell over out front of your house and you put a plaster on, but I didn't like the antiseptic cream you used. Did you check with him? But I could hold you accountable. I could have a conversation with you about the way you spoke to him. I can't jump on the phone to Mr. Instagram and complain about the content he's doing without just fueling the fact that they're getting comments and likes.
Is that world, you talked about risk, right? There's absolutely a risk in that world as well. And we're talking about whether we're letting our kids have risks. I think we are.
Maybe more risk.
More risk. And a different sort of risk. And we're maybe curbing this, but giving this risk in this other place. That's not to say that it's right, but kids search for risk.
Yeah. Would you agree with that? Nothing in sort of the trends you've seen over the years have students or young adults, and particularly the boys, shifted from taking those physical risky behaviors to doing more risky online behaviors? Has there just been a transfer across, or is it
I guess I couldn't speak to necessarily the risky behaviors online, but I can say that there is the rates of suicidal ideation, teen pregnancy, drunk or intoxicated car accidents, things like that have declined. And the rates of depression, self-harm have, the rates, not the rates of suicide, the rates of pregnancy, risk-taking with drugs or alcohol, car accidents, that stuff has all declined. The rates of depression, suicidal ideation, and suicide have all increased since about 2010, which correlates quite closely with the launch of the
rise
iPhone.
of the digital age.
And that is fairly well documented, at least in the U.S. And I would imagine globally, but the research that I've seen has been about the U.S. So I don't know exactly how that relates to the risky behavior online, but they're taking less physical risks. Young people are taking less physical risks and exposed to more individual isolated risks.
Hinder their mental health, and they don't know where to go to.
Disconnections with peers and things like that.
And I don't believe that some of these problems are new problems either. My son is 8 years old now, but maybe 2 years ago he was already talking about wanting to have more muscles and having this kind of ideal musculation sort of view of what a man is, and that's not something that comes from me. I'm not, a big muscle gym iron pumping guy. He doesn't have access to a smartphone or too much internet access, but he still had this sort of body image challenge that he was facing. And I worry that when he gets online and the toxic masculinity kind of comes down, they are muscle, or a lot of them tend to fit that type of the alpha male of going to the gym and working out because a man is big and strong and look at my muscles. And then my son sees that and it already fuels what's actually an older problem in society of stereotyping. And maybe some of those risky behaviors or those ideas, they get compounded because you're not taking the risk, you're not finding out.
Yeah.
And that's...
I've certainly seen in the last few years in education, in schools, grade 9, 10 boys, there has been a significant increase in their muscle size, but also in the number of students that are doing it. And there's a particular group that are growing, really fast. When I was at school, by the way, I was the same. I used to love, around 15, 16, I used to love going to the gym. I would go to the gym with my friend at the time, and he was just a lovely guy. I was envious of him because he could eat 8 Weetabix in a sitting. And there's a reason, because he'd go to the gym and train. And I was interested in that. Oh, he's eating 8 Weetabix. I'd go train. And I went to the gym with him and I would work out and we'd really push ourselves. But we'd take advice from the local, talking about a father figure. There was a guy there. He was amazing. I swear he was like permanently 40 years old, but he could have been 85. And he would work with us and he would help train us and he'd give us the advice. He'd talk to us about nutrition. He'd get us our protein shakes. He would guide us. We did it properly and effectively and authentically. I wonder now if the students that are doing it, they're so quick to build muscle. I don't know if their environment even, I had the father figure in the gym, if they have that sort of father figure and if that there comes from the online stuff that they see and what they're guided by. I don't have an answer to that, but it is my feeling that that's probably true. That their reasons for getting big might be driven by if you look like this, and their way to do it may be driven by somebody who is not genuinely a proper trainer.
There's not the positive counterbalance to that with the rise of convenience gyms and modern society's convenience. 24-hour gym. There's no trainer. Like, you don't have that personal connection of that forever 40-year-old that's been there running the local gym. You've got a kid straight out of university or college, their first job just to monitor the gym equipment, not to build a connection with people. The gym's there for you to work out with your headphones on, your video in your hand in between sets, where you're just watching more of that maybe not so positive influence coming out. Lift harder, lift more, be stronger, be more alpha. And if you still can't succeed, it's not your fault.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And I've seen that in the gym now at my age, and I see kids at a younger age. But when I was at the gym, if I was doing something incorrectly, he would come over and just like say, hey, just so you know, if you want to do this properly, this is how you're going to do it. And he would just talk me through it and guide me through it. And it's important because of this. So that was when you asked about father figures, he was actually one of those father figures that guided me to train effectively and responsibly. So, yeah.
What about yourself, North? What are you trying to sort of father out right now? I'm dealing with my son's kind of muscular body image dysmorphia at 8 years old.
Body image definitely came up for me when I was thinking about it, because they're watching YouTube videos and shorts, and there's a lot of that kind of stuff that's out there. And I think, in all of our media that we see outside of our screens, there's obviously beautiful women and men that are plastered all over our city and wherever you are in the world, and so you get that even without the screens, right? But yeah, just the other day, I think my son was having a conversation with parents and his peers about six packs, and he's 9 years old.
Yes, my daughters have been saying the same.
Yeah,
Daddy, why do you not have a 6-pack? I said, I have a family pack. I don't. This is just how I'm designed, and I'm really happy. So then we had to unpack the 6-pack in
and
conversation,
repack it into the family size value pack.
Family size value pack, exactly. Because I think part of that was going around clothes shop and seeing the underpants adverts on the walls.
Right.
But it's often chiseled.
Yeah. It's interesting because all of the kind of positive influences that we've mentioned are they're close enough to connect on a human level.
Yeah.
They instill, not necessarily even positive values, but they give you space to form opinion that doesn't get echoed back 100 times. You've not got 100 of the gym coach or the model staring at you in the face, one after the other, or every single street sign, or every person you speak to in the gym is saying the same thing. Whereas the algorithms, it's the same message being delivered in 100 different ways, feeding you further down the line, which is kind of like the coaching mentorship in society is eroding away. And it's interesting, Jez, when to circle back to some of the stuff you were talking about earlier of that, the dance drama teacher who was female but was able to parent or build a coach relationship. Because when I go back to, when I look at what is the remedy, or is there a way that we can realign stuff, I think it comes down to that human connection. And what David Dubois says, it's sort of like a mentorship. It can correct course faster than any other kind of intervention if you've got a trusted friend or adult who can guide you. And when I look back at the story I shared at the start, when I spoke to that student, I didn't challenge that student. I showed up for that student. I was like, I've been hearing about this. Tell me more. I want to find out. And at the time, I was curious. What is the viewpoint? What does that look like? Okay, well, what is the role of menstruation? You don't have curiosity. So what do you understand it to be? So what is its role in your life? Like, did you... And just by not going into conflict, not saying that he was wrong or right, but being there to offer a mirror and a bit of guidance, and just, as you say, the gym coach coming and just correcting the technique a little bit of, well, maybe it's true in some cases, but what about in other cases? Like, without it, your mother wouldn't have been able to conceive you. So there's obviously a positive to, and slowly, sort of giving him a mirror. But that same child went on to work on period poverty campaigns and advocating for menstrual health for women. So it was a real positive change because of that, just showing up and being present. And someone in real life is more powerful than someone on a screen. It's just, if there's no one in real life, the screens are stepping in. And I saw that me showing up as a person, as a human connection, was able to change what could have been a very bad path to go down. I'm wondering if either of you have seen similar, like, ever come across like someone changing path because of a human connection? Was that a one-hit wonder, or am I seeing a pattern?
Yeah, I mean, you talk about human connection, and I really want to come back to that and also tie it into the fact that my background is as a dancer. I mean, training as a dancer, that feedback loop relies on human connection. And so whenever I was working, whether I was doing ballet and somebody was correcting it with a stick, rightly or wrongly, but it helped to identify where certain muscles are, or to give you direct feedback on how you're doing a particular exercise, how you can jump further, how you can point your leg, pull your stomach in, pull your shoulders back, all these different things. You have got human connection because somebody is right there with you, like the person at the gym. To connect this to dance now, and if you look at any of the reels that go around, if you look at TikTok, dance is all mimicry, right? So it's all mimetics, and you see something, you copy it, and then you film it yourself. It's this mirror image. There is no human connection. Well, you could say there is, but the human has to be behind a screen. But what's happening is I see, I learn, I do. Right? Whereas when I was learning to dance, I would see, I would learn, I'd be corrected, I'd be guided, I'd be coached, I would move forwards, I would feel empowered by what I'd done as a dancer. And often I see, particularly with K-pop, is really an amazing dance form. A lot of it in schools is mimicry. They will just copy exactly what they see. Now, to tie that right back full circle to what's going on in terms of toxic masculinity, there isn't that person to guide them in this process. A father, perhaps, or a teacher, perhaps, because they've been exposed to this on screen. They see, they copy, they maybe film themselves, and it goes back out there. So that feedback loop, for me, somewhere is missing, whether it's with dance or whether it's in life. So I think that's quite a crucial point for me.
What about yourself, North? I want to come back to a few things you shared there, but I want to give North time.
Yeah. Well, I like what you're saying, Jez, that connection is so important, and that being able to take the learning and be corrected in the moment as you continue to walk forward, and that connection doesn't happen through a screen. It's not there whatsoever. So I guess I think about people are busy right now, and maybe they always have been, but I know adulthood is really busy for me. And so I think that's where schools can be really, really beneficial. Schools that allow time to make those connections with individual students and have intention with those connections, really making sure that every student has an adult in the building that they're connected with, that they feel comfortable with. And that's just one more person. Because at home, hopefully they're getting some attention from their parents. And in a lot of cases they are, but it takes a village to raise somebody. And that village is about connection. It's not about seeing somebody through a screen.
I think that kind of ties this kind of conversation to kind of the key point that fathering is not a role. Fathering is a verb. It can be done by a coach. It can be done by the female drama teacher. It can be done by a stick telling you where to stand. It can be done by a teacher. It can be done by a neighbor.
More than telling me, I'll tell you.
Very stern father
very
figure, that
stern,
stick.
very stern.
But if society is not filling those roles, if we're not seeing it as a verb and we're saying, you're the father, it's your job, and leaving that individual to do it in the busy world we have, we're going to get somebody else filling that gap. And society needs to be the one to fill that gap. So in one line, kind of to close the episode out.
One line.
One line. What was my line to? Yeah. Why did you say yes to this? To being on here?
My goodness. I can't do it in one line. I wanted to learn more about myself as a father because I, for sure, don't always get it right. And I want to know what it means as a father moving forwards. And I mean fathering. I don't just mean my own children, that's really important, but also as an educator and as a human, what that looks like. Big sentence. There's lots of commas.
Much run-on fragments, but it was there.
Fragments.
You didn't take a breath.
Fragments.
How about yourself, North? Why did you agree to this?
I just want to try to say yes to things and take risks. And like Jez is saying, if it can improve how I think about fathering and think about my work with young people, that is a benefit for it too. And if it benefits other people outside of my sphere of individual connections, that's wonderful. But I guess for me, I just like trying new things. And if I can learn something from that, maybe that's selfish, but I feel that fills my cup up.
I like it. For both of those I can connect with, because it is, this whole conversation is we don't have it figured out. We're still fathering it out. And reflection and conversation means that we will be able to father our own kids and other people's kids better. I think screens have been, and the algorithm have been a big conversation piece of today, or topic that maybe we can unpack a little bit more next time we get together, because I know in my life, it's a fight I'm having with my son at the moment, and a hypocrisy I know I'm facing, that get off your screen as I'm then on my laptop working, or I'm scrolling or whatever else, and that hypocrisy and that balance. Maybe something that we can discuss.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming, gents.
No worries.
I'm Danny. Jez.
Jez, yes, thank you.
I'm North.
And we've been fathering it out.
Yes.
Yes, we are.
Thank you.
Cool. That's it done.